Today on Like First Love, Grassroots Coach Development, we were really fortunate to be joined by Richard Shuffleton. So Shuffs has been a good friend of mine for quite a while now. I first started work at the FA and Richard was my line manager. So I've worked underneath Shuffs for probably about 6 years or so before I kind of changed job and moved elsewhere. And Shuffs moved to Durham FA and now heads up their entire coach development programme. He tutors on the UEFA B licence, so his actual coach detail and his coach understanding is about as high as we're going to be able to experience really, just on the sheer volume of knowledge that Shuffs has. So it was a really good conversation and we were able to delve into a lot of really specific things that you can take away and you can implement into your session and really dive into the minutiae of coaching detail really. So brilliant opportunity for us to have that conversation and something that hopefully you guys can utilise a bunch of things because Shuffs buries into many different areas and I'm sure you'll be able to take something from each facet to go and work with your players in your environment. So today we are joined by Richard Shuffleton. Really looking forward to this conversation. So Rich, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So I won't kind of wax lyrical too much about Richard's background, but we met each other, I was trying to think, probably about 12 years ago, so 13 years ago, something like that.
Hopefully.
So Shuffs used to be my boss for about 6 years, I think it was. So it was kind of your fault that I ended up working for the FA and you know, it was your mistake. But yeah, we met as part of the FA Skills programme. And then since then, I kind of came to Stockton and you stayed on at Durham County FA as a coach development lead,
yep,
is the title. So I think with your background in kind of coach development and as well as just coaching, I think this is perfect realistically. I think everything that you bring to the table will be around what grassroots coaches need because that's your field of expertise. So, you know, really looking forward to a good conversation. So like we do with everyone, kind of looking for that first key principle you think for our grassroots coaches to take away.
Yeah, I think the big one probably straight away is around kind of maximising player development within your sessions. So your grassroots coaches probably on average at Stockton 1 hour a week training session.
Like that, yeah.
So it's about how you can maximise your time within that 1 hour to support the players' development over the course of a week, a month and a season. There's probably loads of ingredients that will go into that. I suppose fundamentally be about more of them and less of you as a coach. So getting the players on task really nice and early, getting them into practices that are going to support their development and making sure that you get the full kind of benefit of a 1 hour session where they're playing, you're supporting as and when required. Probably loads and loads of stuff as you'll know yourself. So do you get the challenge level right? Do you get your practice design right? Do you make sure the ball rolling time is really high for the players? Do you make sure that you've got differentiation in there to make sure that you're supporting all of the players across? But just fundamentally making sure you get the most out of your session. If you want to dig into a bit more detail, we can look at things around kind of practice numbers, practice size, practice design. I don't know if that's the kind of stuff that you want to start kind of looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, obviously you said there kind of maximising the time that you've got. Like you say, you know, we've got an hour working with whatever age group. I think pretty much every age group at our place has an hour. So what are the kind of, you know, where would you start with that then? Okay, so obviously we know the FA's DNA, if you like, or the 12 principles that they used to have around, right, it used to be like aim for a 70% ball rolling would probably be that thing. So what can we do to try and maximise that time? What are the kind of key takeaway messages that you can have in your toolbox?
I think sometimes you find, don't you, that you'll turn up to training, you've probably got questions from parents, you've got kids rolling in, some kids on time, some kids late, and you probably find that your first 10-15 minutes end up being a little bit of a, not a mess as such, but a bit of a free-for-all where the kids are just kind of having a little bit of play about. So I suppose the first thing that we always used to do as part of the skills programme is get them into games straight away. So if you can set up little small-sided practices where the players will arrive and they'll get straight into the games, one, you'll probably find that the players will engage straight away, but two, you'll probably find that those kids that turn up 5-10 minutes late, they'll go, actually, this is really exciting, I'm playing matches straight away. So you get them into little small-sided games, and over a course of time, the kids will start understanding the process and they'll manage that themselves. So rather than you having to be setting everything up and then saying, right, you play on this pitch, you're playing there, kids will come in, let them self-manage it themselves. They'll end up playing 1v1s, 2v2s, overloads, underloads, etc. And it gives them an opportunity to get straight on, get them playing, gives you a bit of time to relax, maybe have those conversations that you need to have. but also then to start to see what numbers have I got. So if I've got a few players missing, so how will that impact on the rest of my session? Where are the kids today in terms of behaviour, engagement, etc., etc. But you're getting them straight on task straight away and giving them a bit of their time where they're having the opportunity to play. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to throw the ball in and just go off you go for 10-15 minutes. It might be that you get a week where it's like that and they self-manage, but then there might be weeks where you're throwing challenges in for the players aligned to what you're working on within that particular medium-term programme, or whether it's a one-off session, so you're giving them little challenges to think about, sets the scene before you then start moving into your next practice. I think on top of that, the next thing might be that as coaches we often maybe try and set up lots of little practices and go, right, I'm going to do 10 minutes of this, then I'm going to go and do 10 minutes of this and 10 minutes of that. And what you then probably find is that the amount of time that you spend setting a practice up, sending the kids for a drink, explaining the practice, back into the practice, moving around, means that all those little chunks of time start adding up. So before you know it, your 1 hour session might end up being more like a 30-minute active playtime session. So you want to try and make sure if you've got your 60 minutes, maximising that through your practice design, how many practices and how you flow from one to the other becomes really, really important. So I try, if I can, to work where I've got my setup, my framework for my 1 hour, and I try to stay within that one practice. It might be moving 1 or 2 cones, it might be moving 1 or 2 players, it might be manipulating the practice slightly, but fundamentally trying to stay within one area, one practice, just to make sure that we're on it and we're working, we're getting the most out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously that ball rolling thing's massive, and what I'd encourage people to do is kind of go away and like time yourself.
Yeah.
I know it's something we used to do when we worked together of, right, okay, if we've got an hour, just almost have your watch on, and right, if they are playing football, it's the watch is rolling. And if they're not, whether it's you talking, whether it's them having a break, whether it's you setting up, whether it, whatever the metric is where they're not playing, just stop your watch. And I think everyone will be, if they've never done it before, it's amazing how much time you lose out of your session, isn't it? Like, yeah. I've done it before where I think I've hit a pretty high percentage, and then I come away and, like you say, might have had like a 50% of my session was actually active.
Yeah.
And that's just someone who's reasonably experienced, you know, done it quite a bit and still getting nowhere near. So I think that's a massive part of it, and those things around, right, can we get them straight into a game at the start? Well, you probably find the kids aren't as late. Obviously, if the younger ones, the parents control the diary anyway, but some of the, even with the older ones, just stick them in that little 3v3 to start with. Well, if they know they're arriving and that's what's happening, watch how quick they want to get there. Watch how quick they want to get to football. So it's a massive part of it. And I think the way that we kind of structure within is just be aware of it. Just constantly be aware of, right, okay, can I get this message across in 10 words as opposed to 50 words? Can I, if I send them for a drink, can I send them really close to get them back in really quickly?
Yeah.
And that element is huge, and obviously that's a big part of what we used to talk about. And I know at the first time I saw, like, right, put them in those 3v3s at a game was probably coming and working with yourself all those years ago. I think we used to have a session, you used to deliver a session at Sedgefield, and there was, I mean, it felt like 100 kids the first time I walked into the building, to be fair, but you'd literally just have 4 pitches going, and it might be that there's a couple of games going on one. It might be that we change, you know, this one has a smaller ball, this one has tennis balls rolling around, this one, and that's how you vary it, isn't it? Yeah. And would you then link that kind of, if we're talking a rival activity, how much would you link that to your main session? Or is it almost just the first 5 or 10 minutes is this, and then we'll start the kind of,
I don't think there's an exact science as such really with that. I think you might sometimes go really purposeful with your practice design and go, we're flowing from this into this main part of my practice, or sometimes it might just be, this is the 10 minutes, get yourself in, play football, the amount of variables that the players get from playing the game, maybe throw in the odd little challenge, and then we're into the main practice as well. So I don't think there's an exact science to say it has to align and it has to link, but you might put those challenges in where, let's just say, I don't know, you're working on beating defenders 1v1 in your main practice, kids come in, they're starting to play the games, and then all you might do is float around the pitch and go, right, okay, here's a little challenge. If you can beat such and such now 1v1 and then score, that might now be worth 5 goals. So you start encouraging the players to do what you want them to do within the main part, plant a few seeds, let them have a go at doing it, and then move into the main practice. I think the other thing to think about as well is depending upon the number of kids you've got and the number of practices or the little games you've got set up, you don't always need to be on top of those practices. So if that first 10-15 minutes you've got 10 kids, you've got 15 kids, and you've got, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 pitches, physically you can't manage all those pitches. That's probably what the kids like in a way, because you might be working on this pitch, but the rest of the kids get an opportunity to go and play and do their own thing. And sometimes you might have asked them to do something, but because they're playing the game anyway, they go and do what they want to do. But that's not a bad thing, because that gives them that freedom, that license, that creativity to go and play, and you kind of give them a platform to perform in a way, rather than saying you must do this. They've got an opportunity now to go back to the streets, what it was like when we were kids, to do the stuff that they might not get an opportunity to do now, which is play and experiment and be creative, and you're just helping as and when required before you maybe get into the main bit, which might become a little bit more of your time, your focus time on the work that you want to do with your players. But I don't think you can get lost in that. I think you've got to think as a coach, actually, what the kids don't get now is that opportunity to play as much free football away from organised, brilliant facilities, great coaching. They turn up and they get this, but they don't get everything else because of society and computers and dark nights. So actually that first 10-15 minutes might be really important socially as well for the kids, just to mix, just to go and do their own stuff, have a little bit of play, have a little bit of fun, before they then maybe get back into the main meat of what you want to work on.
Yeah, and it's that playground mentality, isn't it? Of, how often do we as coaches think, well, the reason I'm here is to manage this and structure this and be on top of everything. And like you say, sometimes, if you've got 15 players there and they're all doing a 2v2 and there's an overload on one of the pitches, well, if you've got seven little games, 7 games, that's the worst match you've ever seen. If you've got 3 or 4 games going on in a particular area, and they're just, right, go and play that 2v2, there's a 3v3, there's a this. Well, step back. And it might be that I'm working with this pitch right now and we're having a little conversation while the other pitch is going on. And then when we talk about managing that session throughout then and kind of hitting the ball rolling time, if you want to call it that, or maximising your time, it's amazing how once they've had that opportunity to play at the very start, how much they then just switch on for the rest of the session because they're engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
As soon as they touch that ball and they're playing and they're active, right, if I now want to talk to them and call them in, well, they're already in football mode. Whereas they might have arrived and they're not in football mode, they're in, my mum and dad have just shouted at me in the car park mode.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose those first 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what a great little release for them. And kind of how much do you think that plays a part in, right, okay, we're going to go and play, we're going to get them attuned to me early doors, and they're going to kind of listen. I know, right, they're now putting in my hands, and you're probably one of the better coaches that I've ever seen do it, in that after that first 10 minutes, the engagement is on you and it's focused and the players turn up and they're there. How much do you think that plays a part in that arrival aspect?
So I think there's quite a few strands to that as well. I think fundamentally you're kind of giving them what they want straight away, aren't you? I mean, I remember as a kid, 20, probably more like 30 years ago now, grassroots football turning up, and the first 10 minutes would be, right, go and run around a pitch. So you're running around a pitch, warming up, and you're thinking, why am I doing this? I'm not here for cross-country training, I'm here to play football. And straight away you're a bit like, so you're on the back foot as a coach straight away because you're not giving the players what they want. So you get them in, you give them what they want, and the kids are already getting what they want. And if anything, if you're then saying, right, in quickly, we're going to get back straight out doing something very similar, they'll want to be back in playing. So they'll come to you, they'll give you your time, make sure your instructions are really quick and sharp and concise, and then bang, they're back out again. I think linked to that, the other side of it is, if you've put them into something, don't always set a time on it. So if we've got these small-sided games, and I think at the start I said 10-15 minutes, but actually if your kids are playing, they're on task, they're engaged, they're being challenged, don't then suddenly go, right, we've done 10 minutes, I need to stop and bring them in now. Go, actually, let's work here a little bit, and that next part of where you were going to go might end up just moving further and further down the line because you're getting real high-level returns of what you want from it. So if you're getting what you want, don't go with the time. If it drops off and you put them into the games and you're going, well, this ain't working. So Richard Liam said, try this, and it's not working. Yeah. You might need to bring them in, have a little chat, set your expectations and your standards. These are your challenges, bang off you go again and play. So if you're getting what you want from something, don't be too kind of strict with your time to say, right, we're done now and you're coming now doing something else. Go, right, they're buying into it, they're engaged, as I say, they're challenged, keep on flowing with it. But then, as I say, when you're then bringing them in for the instructions, it's going back to that time management side again around maximising your player development. If you then bring them in after 10 minutes and then they get a drink and then I spend 5-10 minutes now talking at you, kids will start looking up here, they'll start messing about, you'll start getting poor behaviour, they won't engage with what you're talking about, and then before you know it, you've wasted 5 minutes of that 1 hour there and then another 5 minutes later. So if you can get them in, short and sharp with what we're doing, back out, whether it's back onto that practice or into something different, and just to get them playing again and doing what they want to do, because respectfully, they're not that interested in us as adults, are they? They just want to be playing the game that they've come to do, but we still have to obviously have an impact on the players. So it's not just saying throw the ball in and let them play. How can you have an impact on your players within your practices, but making sure, as we said right at the very beginning, it's more of them and less of you. So your interventions short and sharp where possible.
Yeah, and I think again that's probably a message I learned from you more than anyone, certainly early doors. So okay, I joined the team with yourself and a lot of other really qualified, knowledgeable coaches, and we were delivering together, and it was a case of, I think my first few weeks I was very much conscious of, right, okay, we've started this, we've worked for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right, I need to move it on, I need to prove myself as a coach, probably to the kids, to the parents a little bit, and to yourself ultimately as my boss watching and working with me. And actually what I noticed very quickly was, well, you might not intervene or change a session for, we might have gone 20 minutes and Shuffs hasn't actually changed a lot yet.
Yeah.
What you've done is you've gone around and had individual conversations or conversations with groups. And again, that's a great way to maximise that time of, right, if you've got 15 players in a session, well, there's nothing to stop me just talking to these 3 during it.
Yeah.
That means these 12 are still playing, they're still active, but the message doesn't need to go to those 12. The message needs to go to these. And, that's a really key takeaway in that, every message doesn't need to be, right, stop, stand still. Everyone come in, everyone listen to me. But if it's very specific to this kid, well, I'll just have a conversation with this kid. If the whole group need to hear it, okay, yeah, stop them. And it's almost that thing of, right, okay, I need to understand, I want to maximise my time, but if I have to speak, I have to speak. There's also, I've seen the other extreme, and we used to call it the whole, like, game be the teacher thing, and it was almost an epidemic of, no, just let the game do it.
Yeah.
And you think, no, you're allowed to stop them, you're allowed to talk to them, you're allowed to give messages.
Yeah.
It's just make sure when you give your messages, it's not story time.
Yeah.
It's, no, here's a precise message, this is the info you need. And I've watched you deliver courses, and we'll be stood on the sideline chatting, and it's no one's coaching, no one's doing anything. Everyone's just kind of standing back because they're so conscious of that ball rolling time or maximising time. So how do you think? Is it an experience thing? Is it something people need to play around with? How do you think you kind of find when to step in, when to hold back? Is there specific things you're looking for? How do you kind of let the session run without letting it run too much, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously, I suppose it goes back to observations to begin with straight away. So obviously, as soon as you put the ball in, let them play, observe, see what's going off, and then it's about impact and influence. So if we just suddenly go, like you said, the game is the teacher and the ball goes in and we don't do anything, then they're getting lots of play, which is great, but there might be bits that they need a bit of help with. So it's observing to recognise the right time to step in to go and impact and influence on individual or collective performance. And as you rightly say, there's nothing worse than the coach stopping the whole group every time to go and address something that's only relevant to an individual. So again, thinking back to being my playing days, whether it be kid or even as an adult football player, you're playing as, let's say, as left back, and then the coach suddenly stops to go and do some work with a central midfield player, and you stood there and it's freezing cold and you're thinking, come on, this isn't relevant for me. However, if it is relevant and we're looking at connecting players as part of a unit or part of the collective team and it becomes more tactical, then quite clearly that's your opportunity where you need to stop it for the whole group. But I think observations become really key. So be comfortable kind of stepping away from the practice a little bit and observing and recognising the right time to go and step in and have that impact on the players. And I think sometimes as a new coach, particularly in the grassroots game, you kind of feel the stares of the parents behind you, feeling as though, well, I'm the coach, I need to be here and I need to be constantly telling people what to do and helping them all of the time. And actually you do that and it becomes a little bit clouded. And are you doing that for yourself? Are you doing that for the players? Or are you doing that for the parents that are watching behind you? So actually, if you can take those moments to observe, fully see what's happening in the practice, what impact are you wanting to have, and then, as I say, recognise the right opportunities to go in, help them and get back out again. And we try, and there's no exact science again behind this, but we try to advise, if you can, to ensure your interventions aren't any longer than 30 seconds. I know for a fact that sometimes I'll go way over that because naturally you do and you get caught up in the moment, but it's around recognising when to step in, and then when you do step in, whether it be a question, a challenge, an information, demo, whatever it may be, can it be short, can it be sharp, can it be impactful, so you can get in, get out, but you've had an impact on the players. Whereas if you go in and you're waffling, possibly like I am now maybe, but you're going in and you're giving too much information, then again it just becomes a bit clouded, players ignore what you're saying, or they've heard the first bit but they missed the next bit and so on. So in, out, and see what impact you can have.
Yeah, it's how prepared you are, isn't it? Because that'll inform the observation skills, I think, of, right, if I know exactly what I'm working on tonight, I know my players, I know the topic, I know this is my session, this is what I'm looking for specifically. Because obviously there's the game, so there's 1,000 things happening at any 5-minute spell. There could be mistakes in every aspect of the game and everything. And right, I could jump in on this, I could jump in on this, I could jump in on this. Well, the reason my observation skills are so key and so needed is, well, I know what I'm looking for, I know what I'm wanting to do. Right, I've seen it, bang. Okay, I can now go in and I can act.
Yep.
So it's right. What are you observing? So it's if I'm looking at a session and I'm working on counter-attacking, well, there's a certain element there in the midfield in terms of right, one team's just retaining. The left winger should have done this, and we could have retained better. Yeah, well, I'm not working on that. Just let that one slide. It might be a little conversation with the left winger another day, or when we work on another topic. So it's not a case of just observing everything. It's actually, let's put the magnifying glass on what we're working on.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm observing, because that's what I can then impact.
Yeah.
And that's why those skills are really key. And I think that comes with just experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's, I remember early on, I wouldn't see it. It was either too quick or I was looking through too wide a lens. And it's right, can we focus in and
and even then, to be fair, I think you will often talk about, even when you're more experienced and you've been around the game for a while, you don't see everything because you've only got 2 eyes and you can't, you're not always looking at the same thing. So if me and you observed a practice now, you might see something slightly different to what I see, and we might miss moments. So are you focusing on the ball? Are you focusing around the ball, away from the ball? All the stuff that you get on the UEFA B stuff, and sometimes you might see something but miss something else. So as you say, if you can narrow your lens down a little bit and be really clear and specific on what you're looking for, then you're probably going to have a greater impact on your players. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, you've mentioned the UEFA B there, so I'm conscious of kind of moving into that category really. And a lot of people watching will be kind of on their coaching journey, and people be at different levels or different qualifications or whatever we want to classify it as. And so obviously your background is coach development, your current job is coach development. Alongside your job, you've tutored, I think, pretty much every course, if ever, but I would guess, the old youth mods and all that type of thing. Now you're doing the B licence, I think. Is that the only one you tutor currently?
Yeah.
Coach develop, the new term.
Yeah.
So you're working at that kind of level, but you've worked at below as well. So with your coach developer hat on then, or your tutor hat on, what are the kind of key things that coaches should be looking for to kind of accelerate their development? Is there specific things you think, given the volume of coaches that you come across on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, God knows how many coaches you've worked with in the last 15 years you've been doing it, what do you kind of think, right, these are key? We talk about the coaching principles of, you've mentioned your first one there, but is there things that they can do to accelerate their coaching performance, whether it's courses, whether it's going and thinking about a certain thing, reading a book, what can they do to accelerate their coach behaviours?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like being a player really. I think if you want to get better at playing the game, you've got to play the game. You've got to play it as much as you can. I think it's the same with coaching. I think the biggest thing will always be getting on the grass and being on the grass. Had a conversation with somebody yesterday who's just booked onto the UEFA B, but they've just moved away from the team that they were coaching at, and they now don't have a team. So they've said, is that going to be a problem? Well, absolutely it'll be a problem, because you need to be on the grass every single week. So I think it's being accessible to players, being on the grass as much as you can, and leading and coaching sessions as much as you can. If you turn up and you're an assistant coach, you might be there just to kind of help and support the person who's leading it, but actually just having those little moments between the two of you where you can work together. Again, 2 sets of eyes, 2 bodies working with players, but having an opportunity to go and coach. So I think the coach education pathway, obviously it's different now. A lot of the coaches have probably done the online level 1 course, and if they've not progressed on to the UEFA C and certainly the UEFA B, then you've not had as much support maybe on the grass as what you probably require, which is why the coach development stuff that we lead on kind of comes into play, that informal support where you've not got assessment-based work at the end of it. It's not formal, no one's really judging you. It's more about people helping and supporting and giving you things to think about, which is probably this conversation. It's not about telling people what to do. It's just giving people stuff to think about. So I think trying to engage in as much kind of coach development, CPD stuff, whether it's internally at the club, whether it's externally, and seeing as many different people work as possible is really kind of beneficial for your own development. But then just being on the grass and doing stuff, I think that becomes kind of the big key, where you go, well, I've seen this, I like this, but how can I now adapt and tweak that to make it work with my players, to actually just be regularly delivering. So course is great, CPD, coach development, being on the grass, and probably just having conversations like we're having now, just kind of engage with people within the club as well. So there's obviously yourself within the club at Stockton and Joe, so lean on people that have got knowledge and experience and ask questions and get feedback and a little bit of mentoring maybe within the club, and even other coaches within the club who might have been around for longer, just kind of leaning on those people to gain advice. So yeah, courses, CPD, conversations, but I would say getting on the grass and doing as much of it as you can and learning from mistakes, because it won't be perfect. So having a go, trying things out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, but learning through delivery, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's an ongoing process as well, isn't it? I mean, we were just talking before the cameras turned on, and you know, it's Christmas time, or we've just passed Christmas time, so I've had 2 weeks off, you've just had a few weeks off. I will no doubt go onto the pitch next week and work with a group, and I'll have an existential crisis because it will not be what I'm expecting it to be. I'll feel slower, I'll miss things, I'll miscommunicate, and it's amazing how, you know, going from a role where I was probably delivering like 20-30 hours on the pitch, now I'm not on the pitch anywhere near as much as I do. I make sure I'm out at least a few hours a week working with groups, but it's a muscle, and I can feel if I'm not on the pitch as regularly, when I first step on and I'm working with a group, I just miss stuff, and you think, or if I don't miss it, there'll be a problem I'm faced with, and I think, why can't I figure out the solution? You know, as a session is right, this isn't working. Is it me? Is it the session? Is it the players? It's one of the three, 9 times out of 10. And normally you're pretty quick at going, right, okay, yeah, this is a me thing, I need to get loud and lively. Or this is a session thing, that hasn't worked, I need to change this. No, this is a players thing, I need so-and-so to start doing this. Well, if you're not doing that regularly, it's amazing. You can watch all the videos like this in the world, or listen to podcasts, or read the books, or go on the courses. If you're not putting it into practice, it's not just learning it in the first place, it's an ongoing process, isn't it? Yeah. Do you feel the same? How do you kind of manage that? Do you ever feel like, no, do you know what, I just need to get on the pitch for a
No, it really is. It's tough. I think the more, I suppose in our roles where we're full-time in football and we're not kind of volunteers in the grassroots game, the more you've been around the game and the higher up you work within the game, the less contact you possibly have with players unless you find that time, and time's difficult. You know, I mean, I've got a job in, you know, coach development. I'm tutoring, but at the moment I'm not working with a team, just simply because of the time. And you probably find yourself, like you say, a little bit rusty. You're on the grass every week, 4 or 5 hours a week, but you're with different groups of players. So that, I suppose, gives you different challenges because you're stepping from one environment to another. But yeah, being with the same group of players and working with the players over the course of a season and regularly kind of being at training and match day, you can't beat that process. So I think, yeah, just that regular kind of delivery becomes kind of, really key.
So for the coaches watching then who will have, you know, might be working with the under-13s, I coach 1 hour a week, and then I deliver my game on a Sunday. What can they kind of do then to accelerate themselves a bit as well? So they've only got that 1 hour. You know, if you work somewhere like this, it's dark nights. You can't just go and train on a field on a night because it's pitch black. So you need a facility. So you're limited, in what you've got there. Limited in terms of space, all those type of things. Constraints by, you know, this group can only train once a week because parents' jobs and whatever it may be. What can they kind of do then as well, or in addition, do you think, to, right, okay, Shuffs has said just go and get as much experience as possible. Well, I'm probably limited in how much experience I can gain right now. What can they do you think, to kind of kick on themselves again in that framework?
If they've only got the 1 hour a week, I think it probably goes back to, and it's probably been on the courses that have been, but the whole FA plan, do, review model. So I think it becomes really important that you don't just turn up on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock for your 1 hour session, throw the balls out and go, this is what we're going to do. Make sure that you've got a real kind of plan in place. Times at a premium, we get that. People have got families and work, but if you can find 20 minutes, you know, a couple of hours before your session to kind of map out, this is where we're at a group of players, this is what my players need collectively and individually, and get some sort of plan down. So if we go back to the maximising player development, you know the second you step onto the grass, you're ready to roll with your session and you know exactly what you're going to do. And then maybe not formally reviewing stuff after where you're sitting down with a pen and paper, but just that natural time in the car where you can reflect and review and go, done that tonight, that bit worked really well, wasn't too keen on that bit, what do I need to change and adapt, ready for next time. But just having a real clear kind of plan and process, I suppose, in place, so you know that when you do get there, you're going to have an impact on the players. And there's nothing worse. I've done the sessions before where you've been flying around and you go, I've not had much time to plan. You turn up and you deliver, and you compare that to the previous week or the following week where you have planned it, and the difference in the quality of your session and the impact that you'll have on the players will be huge. So just kind of trying to find that bit of time. I know when me and you did CPD years ago, we always got told for a 1 hour session you should be planning for at least 1 hour, plan for as long as you deliver. Realistically, that's not going to happen, but I think it's really important to have some sort of plan in place where you know exactly what you're doing to go and have that impact. And try if you can to move away from, let's have a look at a YouTube clip and I've seen that, I like that, I'm now going to go and deliver it. Try and go, this is my players, this is what they need, and design something that's going to bring that out for your players to help them get better. That might be watching stuff and going on courses, all the stuff we've mentioned already, but just to start getting those processes going so then you can actually formulate your own plan to make sure that you're having that impact on players.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I instantly think I've stopped doing it now purely for that reason, but it used to be a case of, right, I'll go and work with the under 7s, and then I'll work with the under 12s, and then I'll work with the 18s, and I'll work with the coach, and right, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is it. By the time I got to the under 18s, because I'd had like 3 sessions back to back with no gap, and I hadn't actually managed to plan for that 18 session because I knew my night was going to be what it was, and that, you know, I'd had a busy day at work and all that. The 18th, my session was awful. It was just rubbish, and it was, the main thing was the planning. There was an element of, you know, half my brain's still in under 7 mode from 2 hours ago, but just if I haven't structured it and I haven't thought about it in advance, I find you get quite gimmicky. It's like, oh, well, now I'll do this, and now I'll do this, and now I'll do this, and it loses all structure and all flow. And yeah, certainly when we talk about kind of accelerating that coach's development, you know, you've said there, plan for an hour. I remember we used to hear that, and I used to think, right, okay, plan for an hour, deliver for an hour, review for an hour. You think, right, for that 1 hour session, that's 3 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
And when I came to the club and I started working, I thought, right, I'm going to introduce this culture of people planning and doing this and doing that. And then very quickly I've realised, yeah, well, so-and-so's just came from a 12-hour shift. He's not a chance to spend an hour's planning. There's absolutely no way. And now he wants to go home and have his food and see his kids and his family. Well, he's not going to spend an hour reviewing. Yeah. So it's like you say there, well, can you chunk it? When you have time to plan, can you plan? When you have time to review, can you review? If you can do it straight after your session, great. If not, it might be the day after, it might be in your lunch break, it might be in the car on the way home, it might be. But any time you're thinking of that football session or the next football session, it's got to be beneficial, hasn't it? Whether it's I'm watching someone deliver, I'm evaluating myself to deliver. Well, that's all thought process going into that session. And that's, yeah, you're dead right. That's how we can maximise our time in the game, if you like. Because, yeah, everyone's unfortunately not as lucky as me and you, where, let's be honest, a lot of our job is thinking about delivering football sessions, isn't it? Yeah. And I thought that would be a lot easier to introduce, and I've probably had a dose of the real world, and it's, oh no, people don't have as much time to do this stuff as I probably realised, and it's a massive part of it. So yeah, fully agree with that. So we've touched on the first principle and then wandered around like we do and like we're supposed to on this. That first key principle being maximising the time that you've got with those players. What would that kind of second key principle be for yourself? Yeah,
I think probably links and aligns quite closely, but it's the relationship, I would say, between challenge, support and success within your sessions. And again, there's probably quite a few layers to that. So I suppose one, I'll look at it and go, in a session, how much challenge and how much success do your players get? So if, for example, your challenge level's really high, you're probably not going to get loads of success as a group or as an individual. But then if you flip the seesaw the other way and you go, we're getting loads of success, you're possibly not challenging your players enough. So from a coaching point of view, linked to the planning and linked to maximising it, where do you pitch those two? How do you get that seesaw right of the right balance of challenge and success? Personally speaking, I would always go down the route of more challenge and slightly less success. But if we get that challenge level right, we get no success, then quite clearly your players are going to tap out and they're going to become demotivated. So you need to ensure that your players are getting success, but we're challenging them appropriately. And aligned to that, the bit where I've said the relationship between challenge, success and support, it's about giving them maximum support. That links a little bit to what we said earlier about impact and influence. So the impact that you're going to have on the players, making sure that within that 1 hour session, you've given them the right level of support to enhance and accelerate their learning and development. But it's also the support around creating a real environment where there's lots of care and support and love, that they know that, well, I'm going to give you this real high level challenge, but actually it might go wrong sometimes, and I'm going to help and support you as much as I can, and let's not be too fearful that you might make mistakes. So getting the right level of challenge right, providing the right environment with the right level of support, but also ensuring we get those little bits of success. And as I say, that kind of flow between the three, and where do you pitch that as a coach? Because we might go low level challenge, as I say, and get high level of success. We might go low level challenge, but we're giving them no support. Or we might go low level challenge, but we're giving them real high level of support. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of getting all that balance right.
Yeah, and straight away I'm thinking it's that kind of bell curve, isn't it? And it'd be difficult for me to kind of think, but as it goes up and the challenge goes up, and right, okay, I can get all this success, and it's trying to get the top of that bell curve before it dips off, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because at some point it's going to dip.
Yeah.
And it's right, okay, how much dip am I willing to allow and still get my trade off?
Yeah.
And we've seen 1,000 times where challenges set too low, but the session then looks really good. And I think that's a real thing in grassroots football. If we want our session to look good, we want it to look like they're getting loads of success, because then my session was worthwhile, and parents think it was valuable, and the kids think, I was really successful, so therefore everyone thinks that was great, when actually, have they learned anything?
Yeah.
Because it was just easy. They could have done that if you'd have just went and sat in the social area for the last hour rather than actually being on the pitch. So how do you think then we can find that there's never going to be a particular sweet spot, because we've got a group of 15 individuals or 7 individuals if we're working with the little ones. So if I just have this one challenge point, well, I know he's going to really struggle. I know she's going to be absolutely flying because she's brilliant at it. And I know the rest are going to be somewhere in the middle, because that tends to be what happens, isn't it? You've got your striver, you've got your struggler, you've got all the copers in the middle. How do you think you can kind of set that? Does it go back to observation again? Does it go back to just, well, I know my players well enough? What kind of factors are you thinking into around, right, this is the challenge level I'm going to set? Does it change within my session? Do I start easy and ramp it up? Do I sometimes go the other way? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you've kind of answered it a little bit in terms of the observations, and it probably links back to the planning part as well. And the hard thing that grassroots coaches get all the time is it's a team sport, but it's made up of 10, 15 individuals, whatever size your squad is, depending upon your age group. So it's around recognising the strengths of the individuals, the weaknesses of individuals, and how you can help and support those. I think what we often try to do is we go down the route of players are struggling with this a little bit, so I want to help them get better at this, rather than sometimes looking and going, players are doing really well with this, so how can we now as grassroots coaches accelerate the stuff that they're really good at? So if, for example, I'm really good at scoring goals, well, what are you going to do as a coach to help me get better at scoring goals? Because I can still improve, I can still get better. Whereas what we'd often go down the route of, well, Richie's really good at scoring, like with his left foot, so I'm going to make him work on his right foot. Okay, there might be a bit of that, but actually just test me even more, challenge me even more, stretch me even more. So it's around knowing your individuals, it's around then making sure your planning process is right, and within that planning process it's making sure that we plan for the individuals, maybe over the team. And that balance again is hard, because we're trying to set the kids up for a match on a weekend, whether it be Saturday or Sunday. We've got a 5v5 game or an 11v11 game and everything in between, so we want to make sure the team's right. But if we're truly looking at long-term player development, we need to ensure that every single individual within that session, within our group, is getting better session by session, week by week, month by month, and so on and so forth. And actually, if we help the individuals get better, naturally the collective team will get better. And personally speaking, as a father now with kids that are playing football, I'm not too concerned with where my kids are now. I'm thinking, what are my kids going to be like in 10, 15 years' time? So if they're part of a team that at the moment's not winning games of football, but actually in 10, 15 years' time they're playing at the highest level that they can possibly play at, then you feel as though the job has been done right. So plan for individuals if you can, but also recognise that all those individuals will have those different kind of challenges that you need to help and support them with. Is it realistic to support and challenge every individual within every session? Probably not. So then what do? Well, we support the collective, but we plan different individual bits within each session for certain players, and the next week it might look a little bit different for certain players as well.
Yeah, and it's really hard, and I think you've hit the nail on the head in that it's sometimes, you know, when we hear like FA rhetoric or FA kind of comms, it's right, can each kid have their own learning objective or development plan?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they can if I've got 15 hours a week with them. If I've got 1 hour a week with them, no.
Yeah.
The answer is just no, it's not doable, it's not possible.
Yeah.
They might do that you work on over, like you say, the course of a year, but within that one session, can I meet all 13 players' needs? I'll tell you what, you're going to have to be pretty good, or you're going to have like 5 support staff. So, but I want to touch on, you've mentioned something there. I mean, well, you mentioned a bunch there that I'd love to dive into each element. I mean, we spoke to Michael Dunwell a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of had that chat around, well, can we focus at grassroots level about trying to create the most complete player possible for when they then go and play for our first team manager? So that right now might mean they need to work on this. It's not making them the best player they can at 8 years old. It's no, we're going to put these building blocks in place, and then we're going to build on it and build on it and build on it, so that when they get to 18 and they leave the junior game and go into the adult game, that's when they're the complete player. Don't focus on the complete. But the kind of interesting bit there is, well, we've talked quite a lot about like versus love with people in the past about, right, okay, do we like the game or do we love the game? But I'm thinking there about good versus great, around, you know, if a player is good at a specific thing, we can move on and we work on something else. Well, do we want them to be good or do we want them to be great? And if we want them to be great, we have to keep working on that. So how would you, as a grassroots coach, structure their learning over the course of a year? Do you react to the weekend? Do you think, well, this is what I want them to look like, so I'm going to do that? Or would you create, at grassroots level, a bit of a, no, I'm going to spend a couple of weeks working on this, and then a couple of weeks on this, and then a couple of weeks on this? And how much fluidity do you think there should be within that? So if I've got a structure, oh no, actually, do you know what? I'm going to bypass this bit that I planned. I'm going to go straight to this because of what I've seen. How much thought do you think should go into that in terms of their development plan for that good versus great debate?
Yeah, and we're talking more youth football.
Yeah, you know, so really, foundation phase predominantly, but then kind of that YDP as well. Is it, you know, is it still as...
Yeah, I think as you, and this is a personal kind of view, I think as you move up the steps it probably changes a little bit. I think within the foundation phase, I would never react to what's happened in a game on a weekend, because it's a game, it's a learning opportunity. I think it's really important that we link training to match days. So if this is what we're working on at training, then the match day is just another learning opportunity. So how can we link what we've done here at training on a Thursday night to what the match looks like on a Sunday? So we've worked on, going back to what we said earlier on, we've worked on beating defenders 1v1. So okay, right now in the match day, I want to see if my wide players, can you get on the ball and can you go and try and dribble past someone 1v1? And if we can do that, that might be success. We might lose the game 5-4, but I've seen some success and some improvement in what we've worked on at training to what we've done on a match day. You go up the top end of the scale and go first team A, let's say, and the plan probably is and probably should be around, this is who we've got coming up on Saturday or midweek, and actually our training during the week is leading up to that match day game. So we've observed them, we know what the team's about, how can we work with the players now to get towards that match day environment. Going back to younger players, foundation phase and probably into the YDP, I would look towards kind of your medium term curriculum planning. But sometimes if we go down the route of going, right, I'm going to do 6 weeks on the same work and it's only 1 hour a week, you might get an element of players going, are we doing this again? So how can you keep it fresh as well at the same time? So it might be just little blocks and chunks of work where you go 3 weeks on this, 3 weeks on that, or it might be 3 weeks on this, a week of something completely different, and then 3 weeks on going back to the same topic again. But giving them opportunities to work on stuff where there's a real focused element, but also that platform again, that freedom where it's not as rigid to say every time you've got the ball you have to do this. You've got opportunities because you're hopefully working within the game or something that looks like the game. They've got opportunities to kind of cover all aspects of the game, but you're just going to focus on something. So certainly medium term over the course of the season and going, right, we're working on running with the ball, we're working on combination play, we're working on 1v1s, we're working on finishing, and just giving the players an opportunity to work on everything, but in game-like situations where they get the chance to do a bit of everything.
And would you say, so foundation phase then, we'll bury into that just for a minute, around, right, okay, so I set my medium-term plan. How much of that is individual based, how much of that is combination based, how much of that is team based? For those really younger ones, would you start to introduce much team elements, or do you think it's still too early, or is it just the love of the ball, or where's the kind of cut off, do you think, around, right, okay, once I start drifting into this age bracket, there's probably a little bit more about, you know, if you talk about the UEFA B license, the away from the ball stuff, if you like, versus how much is it on the ball, and what, you know, I don't have to necessarily put a percentage on it, but what age would you say, right, okay, we can start drifting into around the ball now, and now we can drift into away from the ball? Do you think there's age cut-offs, or?
No, I don't think so, because I think every kind of group of players is different, aren't they? You can get an under-11s at Stockton Town compared to an under-11s at another grassroots football club, and they'll probably look different in terms of where they're at in terms of their own kind of ability as a group and individually. So I don't think there's any kind of set rule around that as such. I think the one thing, and we've just kind of alluded to it there, is try and work within the game as much as you can. Practices that look and feel like the game are really, really important for player development. And if we go back to the point we raised earlier on around maximising player development, and we didn't dive into it, but around numbers and space, if you work in younger age groups, you want your numbers to be quite small. So if you're working 5v5 football, you don't want to work beyond 5v5 football at training. If anything, you want to be doing more 3v3s and 4v4s and 2v2s. If you're working 9v9, At training, you might be doing a 5v4 and a 5v4 or a 4v, etc. with the numbers. So keeping your numbers quite low, working within the game will naturally mean that your players are getting everything that the game throws at them. So we've got, right, we're working on under 11s, and let's just argument say we're working on counter-attacking. Well, we're working on counter-attacking, but what are the other team working on? So they might be working on preventing the opposition from counter-attacking. So you're going to get your in possession, your out of possession, your transition, and then you're focusing your lens on whatever it is your topic, whether it be an individual topic, so running with the ball, or whether it be a collective topic of counter-attacking or playing through the thirds or whatever it may be. But trying to do it within the game becomes important, because where you've mentioned there about on, around and away from, all that stuff will naturally start to come out. But if I've got under 7s and we're starting to talk about away from the ball, you're going to start losing your players. So I think naturally as you go up the steps, there's going to be that natural kind of organic evolution around, well, we've got more focus on this, and then we're starting to work kind of further away from it.
Yeah.
But if you can do everything in a nutshell, if you can do everything within a game, you'll get everything the game throws at you, but you've just got your specific focus that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sticking on the phases then a little bit, because, you know, it wouldn't be too much to kind of say, when we talk about foundation phase in particular, obviously we've worked with a lot of coaches, we've seen a lot of coaches through the past. I would suggest, in terms of specifically foundation phase, there's probably yourself and Sturge are the two best coaches I've seen at working with those age brackets.
I'm not sure about that.
Delivery. By the way, Sturge is better than you.
Yeah.
But, you know, in terms of I think in terms of what I've seen, the way that you engage and the way you structure the session with that foundation phase particularly. And by the way, I've seen you work with the foundation phase a lot more than I've seen you work with anything else, because that's where our job used to lie. So, what do you think then for people watching if they're working in that foundation phase, what is it kind of that you feel was so important from your delivery from that phase versus when you then work with the older players? So I know you've worked in Durham Women as I don't know what your job title was, head coach.
First coach,
basically.
first coach, yeah.
Yeah, so you've worked with in the elite game, in the women's game. You've worked with very strong under 18s teams in the past that I know about. You've worked in kind of academy football early doors, so you've spread over quite a large area, probably focusing in on that foundation. What do you think are the kind of key elements? Because that's probably the majority of who's going to be watching, is that kind of 7 to, we want to say 11 or 12, that kind of bracket. What is it kind of the key things for you as a deliverer that sets you apart in that? And you're not going to say you're amazing at it, I get that, because you're just not going to say that. But what are your skill sets that lend themselves to that age bracket versus other age brackets that you think people could maybe take away from a delivery perspective, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I suppose it probably crosses over everything in a way, but it might look and feel a little bit different. But I think in the foundation phase, I think your environment, your connection, your rapport with players is massively, massively important. It goes back to that old saying around people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I think having connection and rapport with players at the young age group is massive. If you get that right, and you get your environment right, it's really positive. It doesn't need to be fluffy, but it needs to be really positive. Your players will do more within the session, so they'll be prepared to try more things out, they'll take more risks on, they'll play with more creativity. They'll do things knowing that actually you're there to kind of help and support them and not to kind of condemn them at the first opportunity. And we probably see too many coaches that straight away, as soon as a mistake happens with young players, they're stopping it, they're on top of them, they're telling them that they're doing it wrong and they need to do it in a certain way. We're actually just giving them that license to go and play with, like I said, lots of freedom and lots of care around it becomes really important. On top of that, you've obviously got to make sure your practice design's right. So stuff that we've obviously covered already in terms of size of area that you're working on, number of players that are working within the practice, doing stuff under pressure. So you're going up against an opponent. I try and kind of package stuff as like an RVP to talk about repetition, variety and pressure. So give your players loads of opportunities to do whatever it is you're working on. Give them loads of variety in the way that they do it. So if I'm working on finishing, it's not just into a coach who sets it and I have a shot, make it look again and feel like the game. But then at some point they've got to do it under pressure. So not in isolation where I'm just dribbling a ball around and having a shot at goal. Can I do it up against defenders? Can I do it up against a goalkeeper? So making sure your practice design is right. It's fun, it's engaging, it's challenging, it's exciting, it's competitive. All stuff that players will kind of buy into, I suppose. And the more your players enjoy it, the more they want to do it, the more they do it, the better they're going to get at doing it. The better you get, the more of it you want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's kind of answered your question.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, that RVP thing, I don't think I've ever heard you use that particular acronym, so that's brilliant around the right. Okay, repetition, variety and pressure. And I think that would probably be slightly different for foundation phase for some people listening as well, because I think we'd probably often miss out the two, the variety and the pressure. I've seen a lot of coaches work with kind of under 9s, under 10s, and the pressure element's probably missing. I think, like you've mentioned, it can sometimes become really fluffy with the younger ones. And we've had these conversations where fun gets brought up a lot, whether it's fun or enjoyment or whatever. And the enjoyment's certainly key, but sometimes I think it drifts. I've seen it so often drift into just fun, and then you don't get the development aspect. Whereas that variety and that pressure probably keep that engagement level there as well, which is brilliant. And I think what I've seen yourself do is your boundaries are really clear in that, right, okay, this is an open space, this is an open environment, and the environment's brilliant to learn, but there's still boundaries allowed to be in place. I think sometimes we get lost between, it's either this extreme of, right, the kids are just in straight lines, getting told off every 2 seconds for the line's not perfectly straight and someone's sat on a ball and gets told off, versus the kids are doing anything and they're just allowed to kind of run wild, and set in a structure where, well, no, these are the parameters that we're going to work in, and now you've got the freedom to go and try, and it's not the failure that'll get a harsh word or whatever it might be, but if you're doing something that's beyond the parameters, we'll just have a little conversation to drag you back within the parameters. I think that's something I certainly learned from yourself early doors, is seeing the way that you set those parameters, and that can then allow for even more creativity in those younger ones, can't it?
Yeah.
I think if there's too much scope to do anything, well, then they almost become a little bit paralysed and they don't know what to do. Whereas actually, no, if I set these constraints, right, it's over to you now as the player. What can you do within that? And I think that's really key, certainly within foundation phase. But then as you progress through, it's probably still just as prevalent, isn't it? And yeah, look, by the way, the RVP thing I'm taking away, I'm using that, and I'm going to pretend as though I made that up. That's getting edited out and I'm going to use it. But look, just again, conscious of kind of moving forward with things. Is there anything that kind of, I'm thinking with your experience and your coach development mindset or world that you live in, is there anything as a grassroots deliverer that you currently struggle with particularly, or is there anything you've struggled to kind of get your head around that is still an ongoing battle that you think you still need to kind of develop? Or because just everyone watching, I think, will be conscious that sometimes when we're talking to people that, well, it's easy for them, they deliver 30 hours a week and they get all this thought and they get opportunities to go and see this and this and this, and you're in a privileged position doing what you do, which a lot of people aren't. So is it, just from a realism aspect, is there anything that you kind of still find that struggle with as you're progressing?
Yeah, well, I think straight away I would say we never get it right all the time. Do you know what I mean? You never get a perfect session. So I think it's having that confidence and understanding. I suppose as you get more experience, that you'll go and you'll deliver. Get my words out. You try and deliver the best session you can, but there'll always be bits that you walk away and go, that could have been better. So I think a message for your coaches straight away is it's never going to be absolutely perfect. There's always going to be bits that you go, that wasn't great. I struggled a little bit in that bit. I think for me personally, the one thing we mentioned earlier around interventions, around trying to minimise that and have as much impact as you can within that 30-second max window, that's probably something that I still go in, and I can sometimes maybe get caught up with giving some information to one player and then spreading it out and going right again on, around, away from the ball, and before you know it, I've been here for like a minute, 2 minutes here. So I think the biggest thing for me personally would be, again, that get in, impact, get back out again. And it's easy for me to sit here now and say that's what we're aiming for, but sometimes you probably find yourself kind of going beyond that. Equally, what I would add on to that is around talking about that there might be times where you do need to go longer, obviously. So if you're working with young players and you've done something that's quite physically demanding, that might be a moment where you go, quick drink, in we come, we'll have a little review, and it might be a 2-minute review before you get the players going again. But if you're on the pitch and you're working within the moment, just trying to be as short and as sharp as you can, and that's possibly something I would say that I maybe still need to get better at. Yeah,
and that comes through reflection as well, doesn't it? And it's key that I'm just really conscious of people watching, understanding that it's never perfect. It's always going to structure, and we'd have conversations after sessions in the past where it's, what did you think of that? I couldn't quite see that. What did you think? I think that's a massive part, isn't it? Of, well, if you are working with someone, if you're not, try to first and foremost always try and have a support coach or an assistant coach or whatever it may be, but ask their opinion, ask for feedback, know where to go for feedback. If you're working in an environment where there's someone there that's a little bit more experienced or qualified, or that's their profession, go and ask, can you come and have a watch? And I think that's the big thing. Don't ask to watch them, ask them to watch you. You're working in the B license now, of you're going out and watching watching coaches and able to give that feedback. How receptive do you find people to that feedback? Because again, that's a big thing for people of, I know a ridiculous amount of coaches that ask for feedback and then you give them it and they're resistant to every single point. And you think, well, hang on, no, it's not personal, it's a discussion. So how do you find that in your role of, how do you think people engage with that?
I think just to jump back one quickly, just while it's fresh in my mind, I think the whole being a tutor on a course, on a UEFA B or a UEFA C, whatever it may be, I think observing people working is easier in terms of seeing stuff that they maybe don't see. So I think having someone to come and observe you is really important, because when you're in the heat of the moment and you're trying to battle with everything around practice design, around keeping players on task, around seeing pictures and getting technical and tactical detail out, sometimes you might get caught up in the moment, whereas actually as a coach developer who stood on the side of the pitch and you've not got to worry about anything and you're seeing them working, don't get us wrong, it's still a challenge because you're obviously looking to observe to give feedback, but you might see things that they don't see. And then jumping back to your question there, I think it goes back to what I said earlier on around working with players in the foundation phase. It's the same when you're working with adults and people. It's around rapport and connections and the way that you talk to people. So if I've been working with you and we come off for a chat and all of a sudden I go bang, 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 don't like that, that's not great. Naturally people get the backs up. So I think it's about kind of giving them kind of frameworks, but also talking about, this is what you've done really well, I like this, I like that, have you considered X, Y and Z, but trying to get their feedback as well. So if you were to come off, I would probably be saying, Colin, what are your thoughts? How did you think it went well? What do you think could have been, better? Get them to buy into the process and then just start chipping away in terms of, this was good, that was good, maybe think about that little bit might be an area for you to kind of work on. But I think if you get your rapport, your connections, your relationships right with people, you treat people right, then I think you can offer something that might sometimes land not so well, might land a little bit differently because of the connection you've got with people. But it's about being honest as well, isn't it? Because there's no point in sugarcoating stuff and being fluffy with it and saying everything was great. Someone's come on a course to develop and get better, and sometimes you need to receive maybe some information that you don't quite like, but it has an impact. And you're probably the same. I remember going through the courses myself years ago, and there's still things I can remember about that could have been better, or you should have done that, rather than the stuff that I possibly got told was quite good. You forget that and you only remember the stuff that they told you needed to get better at. So giving them a bit of both, I think.
I instantly think back to, I don't know if it was my B licence or what, I can't remember what qualification it was, but the most brutal feedback I've ever had, and it was structured really well, but obviously I've just took all the negative stuff, was I think it was Gordon Staniford said, well, this and this, and it's, I can remember word by word every point to come back, because I'd been delivering on my own quite a lot and I was getting quite confident, and I was kind of, my review process probably wasn't as detailed as it should have been, and then I was delivering with you guys and very question based. And I think back to some of the conversation we'd have where you'd question after a session, which was brilliant, and there's that review. And it's almost those three different types of review were all kind of needed. It's right, can I have an internal review, like just of myself? Can you be working with someone who's just going to ask questions and get you to think and prompt? And then are you in a position where someone can actually give you feedback? Feedback's massive, and we avoid it a little bit, I think. And that feedback might be, well, there's no one there, can I just film my session? Can I film myself deliver? And then that feedback, okay, that's self-feedback, but it's still from a different lens. It's still from, well, it's not me delivering, it's I'm watching it back on the film where I can watch it in a different mindset. That's a really key thing. If anyone has that opportunity, because filming yourself now is really easy. You can just set your phone up, as long as you get consent. You can set your phone up however. It used to be a really difficult process to go through. Now, if you want to film every single session, you can, and you won't struggle. So that feedback thing will probably be a massive part as well, I think. But look, I'm conscious again of kind of that last principle, because we've touched on the first couple. Obviously the first one around maximising the time and the opportunity you've got with the players. The second one around that success first challenge and how we support that. What's that third principle you think for our grassroots coaches watching?
I think just to kind of, I suppose, tie it up a little bit would be around kind of always modelling really positive coach behaviours, which I know we've kind of touched upon a little bit, and being really consistent in your approach with your players. I think you think back to when you were a player yourself, or even, I suppose, if you were at school, if you weren't a player, you're coaching now, but you maybe didn't play the game, but think back to teachers at schools and the impact that they had on you. It's around the people you remember, the people that had a real positive impact on you. So your coach behaviours become really important, consistent from training to match day, in the way that you model your own self, the way that you're a role model to the kids. You're probably a role model in a way to the parents. to ensure again that the environment that we create for the players and the way that we engage and support players training and match day is in a real positive light. It's not about you as a coach, it's really not. We need to get away from this whole kind of mentality around winning games of football, and if we lose I'm going to get angry about it. Or when you're working with young players, it's about helping them enjoy the game, enjoying the moment, the experience, excuse me, but also developing from training to match day. So how do you interact with your players at training? How do you interact with your players on a match day? What standards do you set for yourself? What standards do you set for your parents? What standards do you set for your players to ensure that the process is as smooth, as clean and as positive as possible at training and on a match day?
Yeah. How would you suggest someone modelling those behaviours is different? Again, we're talking about cross age groups and cross phases. You know, I'm thinking, right, okay, you've worked with in a professional environment with Durham women there versus you've worked with under sevens teams. Would you model anything different between the two, or do you think your standards are your standards?
I think your standards are your standards. I think naturally the way that you probably engage with people might be slightly different. Obviously, naturally, if you're working in the senior space, you're not having to deal with parents, you're dealing with players, you're dealing with opposition managers, potentially referees, all that kind of stuff. But I still think the way that you conduct yourself is like really, really important. Clearly with young people, as I say, it's not about results driven, it's not about referees, it's not about opposition parents, your own parents. It's about ensuring that the players in front of you are getting the best experience that they can possibly get, because the more they enjoy it, the more the environment's right, the more they're going to develop in the short and long term. And as I say, it's about remembering probably what it was like for us as kids and what did we like. Did we like to turn up and play a game of football where there was no voices on the side of a pitch and we could just go and play, or do you like it where there's loads of adult voices, lots of negativity, lots of shouting? So I think it's about you being the one that can control yourself and can control your own group and ensuring that you're modelling those. Clearly, as you get a little bit more into the senior space, whether it be your youth development phase, 18s and seniors, that obviously looks a little bit different. But I always go, your mindset should be around working with your players. So if you can keep your focus on, this is the group of players that I need to impact on, how best can you do that? Which is probably by keeping calm and collected rather than getting caught up in conceded a goal and I'm going to have a go at the referee because of a decision, I'm going to get caught up in an argument with the opposition dugout. You keep your focus, you keep that kind of clarity of mind, you've got a better impact, or you can have a better impact on your players rather than getting caught up in all the other stuff that you're probably not going to impact.
Yeah, and that's a huge message, and I hope it really resonates, because I've seen here countless times, and I'm sure you see it on courses around, sit and have a discussion with a coach, or we'll tutor a coach or mentor a coach or whatever it is, and they say all the right things, they do all the right things in terms of when they're with you, and it's process driven and it's this, and then you see them on a Sunday, and you think, how is that the same person? Yeah. They know everything in terms of the verbiage and what to say, but intrinsically have this understood it, because it goes to a game day and like you say, they concede a goal and well, everything's changed, and you think, well, hang on, these are under nines, and you know that all this theory, and now it's going out the window a little bit.
Yeah.
So that modelling behaviour is, I think, massive. Is there anything you think in terms of, right, tangibly, what coaches can do to kind of, no, this is what we should be doing on a match day in terms of, whether it's training or match day, in terms of these are the specific behaviours to model in terms of, right, there's the top end of, because there's 1,000 things you can do with training. Training, is it? Right, no, these are kind of key takeaways in terms of this is the behaviour we should be modelling to translate across both.
Yeah, I think you've just got to think, can't you, like, how can I have an impact on my players? How can I help my players enjoy the moment but develop within the game as well? And I think if you think about the game taking place, how much information do you give the players? How much commentating or shouting do you direct towards the players? So I would always say individual actions, try and let the players play the game themselves. So if you've got a player on the ball, rather than shouting to the player, pass it, dribble, do this, do that, why are you not doing that? Let them go and work things out, let them go and play their own game and let them have that bit of freedom. Collectively and tactically, and we're talking again youth football here, but tactically, if your players need a bit of help because let's say your back three or your back four are far too deep when the ball's in the opposition's half, you quite clearly need to give them a little bit of help. But if your support and help is just constant and it's a little bit generic, it becomes really clouded and it's not helping the players. And again, it goes probably back to what we said about training. You're probably doing it more for yourself and the parents rather than the actual players. So allowing your players to play, make notes. So you talk about something physical, have a handbook, have a little book with you, make notes in terms of what's happening within the game. So at half time, you've got some real clarity in terms of the pictures that you want to give the players or the detail you want to give the players, rather than it be coming to half time and you've kind of not really watched anything, you've kind of watched everything and not anything, and you're just giving them lots and lots of information. So be really specific with the information that you give to the players during the game. Make sure that that information, like training, is going to have an impact on the players in the here and now. Make notes, and just as I say, stay really calm and collected in your approach, and really consistent, because you should be the same person at training as what you should be on a match day. And we all know that there's a difference, particularly as you get up the age groups, it becomes more competitive, we get that. But when we're talking youth football and kids football, that consistent approach as a person is really, really important. And the big question to ask, I suppose, as coaches is, who are you? Who are you as a person, and what do you want to model as a coach to your players?
Yeah, look, that's a great question to leave it on, because I think that's something that will inform a lot of what we've discussed. And there's some great tangible, specific things that you've mentioned there around the taking notes and making sure that we model across the two. So no, that's brilliant. Conscious of rounding things up, so I think the 3 points there, 3 massive points, and not something we've discussed specifically with anyone else, which is brilliant. So around that end one of consistent approach and modelling behaviour, that second one of, right, okay, can we kind of set success criteria and challenge points and manage between, and then that first one we opened up with around kind of managing the time that we've got and maximising the time. I think 3 great points for anyone to take away, and give some really great examples thrown in the mix there. So Shuffs, thanks for coming in, great conversation, and hopefully useful for those that are watching.
Thank you.
Cheers.